Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel where we talk about stuff. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and a very big thank you out there to everyone who leaves a like on every video. It would appear as if we're here. We made it. It is supposed to all apparently start happening this week. If you are at all confused, you probably missed a couple hundred videos before this. This week, we are supposed to hear from the Federal Reserve of the United States about their expected rate cut. If you haven't, that would take so long for me to even think of trying to catch you up. We have had news, not only on this channel, but around the world since the beginning of this year, 2025, that the Fed was going to lower interest rates. We heard a couple times from a number of mega banks, JP Morgan, Bank of America, that by the time we get to summer, we were going to have 3 or 4 different rate cuts. These were the expectations. The entire idea was that the economy would slow down, things would get a little bit worse, this would happen, that would take place, and then the Fed would basically go, okay, sure, let's lower interest rates. The expectation from there was then that the crypto market would basically go insane, completely lose its mind, and basically rise in price for months and months and months on end. Where we currently are is that, and I tell this to you in the nicest way possible. For some reason, I think a lot of people maybe don't know about it or don't want to know about it. There are a lot of countries that are currently de-dollarizing. Basically, they're moving away from the US dollar, and they have been doing so since the beginning of this year. It's a cumulative, it's about 30,000 things that have been going on. But at the core of them have also been tariffs and the weakening of the US dollar. The US dollar has lost currently around 15+% of its value since the beginning of the year. Historically, countries have held the US dollar as like a stable currency at times when theirs aren't. And as the US dollar continues losing value on purpose, the idea, for those of you who don't know, it's quite common for other countries to do this. You want to debase and lower the value of your own currency because it then makes it more appealing, if you will, for other countries to say, hey, we want to do business over there. If you have a weak currency, but the profits look like they could be correct, well, let's start doing business over there. That's typically how it works. However, with the world reserve currency, it's a little bit different because when that begins to falter, everything else begins to falter. The other part that many people often, I think, want to miss is that when you lower interest rates, it's meant to like rejolt the economy in some sort of way. The idea is, at its heart, if interest rates are up here, not many people are going to want to take out loans or take out mortgages or take on debt. Nobody really wants to pay 7% for any kind of a loan. 5% is a little bit more attractive, but still not quite there. 1%? You'd have a lot of people taking out a lot more loans. But here's the issue, amongst many. When you do that, debt rises. Yeah, that's one thing that many people don't really keep in mind. Personal debt and national debt begin to rise quite quickly. If a lot of people aren't going to take out 7% loans, but a lot of people end up taking out a 1% loan, the amount of debt that people then have to pay back on that loan extends for 10 years, 15 years, and in many cases, for 30 years. A lot of people end up going into default as well. The other major issue with lowering interest rates per se has to actually do with the amount of money that ends up being created when interest rates go lower continues to rise. Remember in 2020 when interest rates were like 0% and 1%, and we saw like, the amount of dollars being created? That was because of the debt. People get into more debt and that money is then created. That money then becomes part of the creation of the money on top of the other ones that have already been there. And basically it devalues what was printed before. Every time that a dollar gets printed, the one before it is this much weaker. But if you print trillions of dollars at the exact same time, that weakness actually ends up growing quite quickly. So, as we have seen a number of countries actively, openly de-dollarizing, the Fed has mentioned on many occasions that they don't want to lower interest rates, or like they're keeping a close eye on it. They always say these like dovish or bullish kind of statements, or bearish, what have you, whatever the animals that people keep throwing out there for their statements. But it's been actually for good reason. As I said a couple of times over the years, remember how like all these things tend to happen when interest rates, go lower. So the good stuff is that asset prices rise. So that would mean, in essence, the theory is that property prices would rise as more people are buying property, asset prices would rise, crypto prices would rise. We've seen before that people tend to take out, and I implore that you do not do so. People tend to take out more loans when interest rates are lower to throw into the cryptocurrency market, expecting prices to rise higher. Same as every other asset class, but do not do that because it's not for everyone. And while you might then smile and say, well, that's wonderful. I like when asset prices rise. The other side of that is that supermarket prices also rise as well, and so do clothing prices and the price of basically everything else. So then for the 95% of people who do not have it as well as you do and do not have as many assets as you do, they begin to do worse. I'm pretty sure you've been seeing the news of layoffs and all these other things that would also be exacerbated as well. So what we have now is that the Fed has kind of been put into a corner. The economy's not doing great, as you might have noticed. Other countries aren't doing too hot either. And many other central banks around the world have already begun to lower their interest rates. And it didn't really do much. So the attention now is, I believe it's the 17th, is now focused on the Fed. The people who print the money for the world reserve currency, that they are, apparently, this is the news that we keep getting. If you type in Fed rate cut, you're going to see it everywhere. It's all that everyone is talking about because investors have been kind of salivating for a while about this actual idea. There are now predictions that we might get 2 this year if this one actually ends up happening. And I need to keep saying it over and over because we've had multiple indications before from some of the largest banks on the planet who told us earlier this year that it was going to happen, and thus far we still have not had any. If the Federal Reserve of the United States decides to cut interest rates, it is more than likely going to cause asset prices to kind of pump up almost instantaneously. And this would then also lend energy to the idea of this seemingly eternal, as we've been hearing, bull run within the cryptocurrency market. This is very big news. This is very substantial. People think that it's going to happen. It's all over the place. The balance is that you will see prices go higher in the supermarkets. You will see things getting more expensive, and this is usually seen as a thing that just has to happen by many analysts and investors, and it will play out well for people who have assets. Bit of a different video. I know the vibe was like completely not what it normally is, but this is what's going on right now. I think it's often interesting how many people kind of like ignore the other things that end up happening should interest rates actually go lower. It will heavily benefit those who have assets, but you might have noticed all the people losing their apartments and not being able to find a job and all that other stuff is going to come heavier into play, as well as a debt and deficits rise even further and faster within the world, basically. Yeah. So we'll see. When I said, like, all of it's happening at the same time, this is meant to be as well. If you didn't see the last few days, this is meant to be like the beginning of, like, like the crypto bull run, like all the big stuff. And this is like the Fed rate cut is expected to be like the lighting of it, if you will. Very interesting times ahead. This whole thing that's been going on this year has been a lot money-wise. The cryptocurrency market is acting different. Bitcoin's price isn't as high as it should be. A lot of attention's being paid to other things in this market. So let's see if this is actually the thing that all the investors have been waiting for. I do hope that you've all enjoyed. I do hope that you all are having a great day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, wherever you might be. I do hope that it is absolutely fantastic. Thank you all once again for watching, listening, liking, commenting, and supporting, and I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See you.